Watch programs on your schedule with the KPBS Plus streaming service. See new episodes of Nature and Nova, latest news from PBS NewsHour and KPBS Evening Edition, local shows like Ken Kramer's About San Diego. Learn more at kpbs.org/KPBS Plus.
Welcome in San Diego, it's Jade Hindman. On today's show, language around the extremist ideology that led to the deadly attack at the Islamic Center of San Diego and school has been murky. We'll clear it up. This is KPBS Midday Edition, connecting our communities through conversation. The teenagers who opened fire and killed 3 innocent people at the Islamic Center of San Diego were motivated by far-right conspiracies and white supremacist networks. Their manifesto includes hateful rhetoric towards Muslims, Jewish people, Black people, the LGBTQ plus community, and women. They also promoted symbols long associated with white supremacists and Nazis.
These subjects did not discriminate on who they hated.
That's FBI Special Agent Mark Rimley speaking at a press conference yesterday. It's the latest in what's becoming a pattern of violent right-wing extremism. KPBS military and veteran affairs reporter Andrew Dyer joins me now to talk about it. Andrew, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Always glad to have you here. You've spent the last 48 hours sifting through the suspect's manifesto, writings of these attackers. I mean, there's a lot in those pages. What are some through lines?
Well, the through line is it's nothing new, unfortunately. These are the same baseless conspiracy theories. We've seen multiple shooters espouse the shooting in El Paso against, Latino people. Of course, the shooting in Christchurch against Muslims, which is the most direct through line, given that these 2 shooters idolized that killer and sought to pay homage to that shooting by basically copying it, writing on their firearms, live streaming the atrocity, and they say as much explicitly in their manifesto.
The teenagers were motivated by the 2019 mosque shooting in Christchurch, New Zealand. Remind us what happened that day.
Well, a gunman live streamed from a body cam, took an assault rifle into 2 different Islamic centers, mosques, and killed 51 Muslim people.
What was the climate like at that time when that shooting happened?
Well, it was an escalation from what had happened before, but this new, I can't say it's new, but this modern hate-motivated mass shootings kind of traces back to Dylann Roof, who, inspired a lot of extremist violence. One shooting inspires the next shooting, and there's these cultures online that revere these young men and idolize them and declare them to be saints and seek to add their names to the pantheon of great mass killers.
Mm-hmm. And some of that extremism is mainstream. I think at that time, the U.S. around that time maybe was dealing with Muslim bans. And so, out of that, these ideologies are given confirmation and emboldened.
Sure. Since 9/11, there's been, the level of Islamophobia in the U.S. and in the world has kind of gone up and down depending on, global events and what political leaders see as advantageous to them to highlight. We had the threat levels at one point, and Donald Trump wanted to do a Muslim ban. He did one, and then he's repeated that in this term. But marginalized groups, including Muslims, of course, but there's a mainstream political movement that just kind of takes turns demonizing various marginalized groups, whether it's LGBTQ plus people, immigrants of all races, and of course the Islamic community.
You know, one ideology that allegedly appears in the suspect's manifesto is this great replacement theory. Talk a bit about what that is and how, have extremists used it to actually justify their violence?
Sure. This theory undergirds so much of what we see, and it's really important. This is something that was once confined, I think, to extremist networks associated with. It is a white supremacist conspiracy theory that there is a group of people controlling the world who want to dilute the authority and power of white people in the United States by bringing in people of other races. This is where these phrases like white genocide come from, where they want to they say that there's an effort to kind of dilute whiteness, and this was a fringe conspiracy, but in recent years it has very much become mainstream. Most notably, I think Elon Musk repeatedly espouses great replacement type rhetoric on his X account. I mean, he bought Twitter in part because he didn't like that white supremacists were getting banned for so-called hate speech, and the Great Replacement theory is definitely part of that.
Yeah. On yesterday's show, we talked about this concept of stochastic terrorism. What is that, and how could it apply here?
Well, this is the whole thing where you create an environment where a community is demonized in the mainstream, right? Whereas your political leaders or people who have voices in this movement aren't explicitly telling people, hey, pick up a gun and go shoot somebody. But they say things like, oh, they're incompatible with our culture. They're destroying our country. They don't belong here. If you look at some of the rhetoric from President Trump talking about Somali people, and a few months ago when everybody was looking at daycares and harassing people at daycare centers, the rhetoric, the dehumanizing way that they talk about marginalized groups, when some people hear those words and exist in this world and subscribe to that belief system, they just take it, one step further, right? Okay, well, if they don't belong here and they're still here, maybe I need to take it into my own hands to make them not be here. I mean, that is the train of thought there, and it explicitly describes that in the manifesto.
And you, I believe, spoke with the co-founder of Global Project Against Hate and Extremism. Tell me about that, because I think we have a clip.
Yes. So Heidi Barick is the co-founder, and she tracks this movement online. And, she talked about how the kind of recent embrace by the conservative movement of some of this rhetoric may have contributed to this environment.
It's a hard thing to talk about, but it has to be confronted. These kids were radicalized into neo-Nazism, accelerationism, and hate. And they were also radicalized by the conversation demonizing Muslims coming from the conservative world. It's documented in the manifesto.
The suspects were also motivated by misogynistic views. They wrote about women rejecting them. How does that mirror ideologies that propel the manosphere?
So, to understand this, and I apologize that people have to understand this, because these aren't attractive ideas to a lot of us, but there are pockets online where mostly young men go, where all of these ideas and all of these ideologies, they all mesh together, right? So, even when they talk about Muslims, one of the killers says, it's actually the Jews that are bringing the Muslims here, right? Like they are steeped in all of these, hateful ideologies, and that of course includes women. The way they get into these communities, it's a lot of the times it's attraction to violence, or they want to watch gore videos of people being killed. And once you're in these niche interest groups, one thing leads to another, and before you know it, it is a hodgepodge of hate. It really is.
You say they're niche groups, but are you more and more seeing these ideologies become mainstream?
The reason I say niche groups, and I also spoke with Jared Holt from Open Measures, who tracks the way these messages spread online, and what he was saying was that there are, white supremacist and extremist ideologies available on mainstream platforms like TikTok and Instagram that you may come across by accident, you may stumble into. But these spaces where a group of people sit around and venerate violence and idolize these shooters, these are not places you're going to come to accidentally. These young people are seeking them out.
And, just this news, it's so heavy, it's hard to process for many people. What's your approach to covering this story in a sensitive way that doesn't sensationalize violence? So
that's a good question, and it's something I ask experts on extremism whenever I interview them. I always ask where they're at on media coverage and how and the best way to talk about this stuff. And for a long time, it's almost like the social contagion theory. It's why we don't report on things like suicides, and there was a belief that we should not go into details on some of the of this ideology, and I do subscribe to that. Myself. I'm not publishing the manifesto. I'm not quoting the manifesto, and I'm not talking about the extremist groups or the specific symbols that these shooters put on their fatigues and stuff. So there is still some of that, but it's also very important for the public to understand that these attacks aren't happening in a vacuum. There is no lone wolf, syndrome. There is no, perhaps there is some mental instability that could very well be true. Certainly access to guns plays a role, of course, but the motivating factor, the hate, the thing that's driving their ideology is out there, and there is a global kind of white supremacist movement that is seeking this accelerationist movement that is seeking to inspire these types of acts of violence.
Given that these are movements, these are organizations, do you have any sense of if they're at all looking into this as a terrorist attack rather than just a hate crime?
Well, that's an interesting question. 2 weeks ago, the Trump administration came out with its counter-terrorist plan for this year, highlighting 3 threats. That would be Islamic jihadist, like terrorism, drug trafficking, and the far left or Antifa. And it criticized prior attempts to curtail far-right terrorism. So, it remains to be seen how far they're willing to take that angle.
All right. You can follow Andrew's reporting and reporting from the rest of the KPBS newsroom on our website, kpbs.org. I've been speaking with KPBS Military and Veteran Affairs reporter Andrew Dyer. Andrew, thank you so very much.
Thank you.
That's our show for today. I'm your host, Jade Hindman. Thanks for tuning in to Midday Edition. Be sure to have a great day on purpose, everyone.
Watch programs on your schedule with the KPBS Plus streaming service. See new episodes of Nature and Nova, latest news from PBS NewsHour and KPBS Evening Edition, local shows like Ken Kramer's About San Diego. Learn more at kpbs.org/KPBS Plus.